Okay, now this is just going to be a short video. I know, I say that all the time, and then it turns into a not so short video. So, anyway, but as promised, I'm picking up in chapter 2, Acts chapter 2, verse 40, and then going through verse 47, and then I'll do chapter 3 tomorrow, unless there's a major disaster of some kind. But yeah, anyway, so verse 40, it goes on right here. It's way down here. And with many other words. So again, this is just picking up where Peter had given them the whole sermon about getting saved. All these people became Christians, got baptized, and the church grew. So he's still talking. Okay. So, and with many other words, he testified and exhorted them, saying, "Be saved from this perverse generation." Then those who gladly received his word were baptized, and that day about 3,000 souls were added to them. And they continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine and fellowship, in the breaking of bread, and in prayers. Then fear came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were done through the apostles. Now all who believed were together and had all things in common, and sold their possessions and goods, and divided them among all, as anyone had need. So continuing daily with one accord in the temple, and breaking bread from house to house, they ate their food with gladness and simplicity of heart, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to the church daily those who were being saved. Okay, so that ends chapter 2. And now, just to go over this. So again, verse 40 is Peter telling them to be saved from this perverse generation. And I mean, each generation has really been getting worse since then, no doubt. But it was bad enough, obviously, or he wouldn't have said that. So, okay. And then it's verse 41. Then those who gladly received his word were baptized, and that day about 3,000 souls were added to them. Now, in verse 41, we see the sequence here. They gladly received his word, and then they were baptized. So again, it's what goes on inside of you. Their heart, their mind chose to receive the word. They accepted the gospel and were converted, obviously. And then they were baptized. At this point, water baptized. This is what he's, having them engage in is water baptism. It's a public act. It demonstrates your profession of faith. So that's what was going on there. But it's the water baptism, again, doesn't save you. It's the action in your heart that you are turning to God and receiving everything He has for you. You're just becoming a Christian. Your heart is turning to God. It's your move to Him. So it's what goes on inside of you. Okay, and nobody can do it for you. You have to do this yourself. Okay, so that's the act and the event of when you get saved. And it's a two-way street. I mean, God is reaching out and you are responding. So you can't get saved alone and he can't force you. So it is a two-way street. It's a relationship. And there are two involved and each one has their part to play in that transaction. They each have their role. So you respond to his offer, you get saved, and then you get water baptized, but that's not what saves you. Okay, so that's verse 41, and it's 3,000 were added to them. So this grew overnight from, they had 120 at the um, upper room when Pentecost occurred, which is actually still this day here. And all of a sudden, it ballooned out into 3,000 were added. So this is growing fast, and it will continue to grow fast. Verse 42, and this is interesting too, they continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine and fellowship, in the breaking of bread and in prayers. This is also part of what's supposed to happen among the church. Okay, so notice it says they continued steadfastly, and it includes all these things. One of them is the apostles' doctrine. So doctrine is important. It's not something people can just throw over their shoulder and say, oh, well, whatever, no. I mean, doctrine is the building blocks of the gospel involve doctrine. The true faith involves doctrine. You need to have true doctrine to have the true faith. So doctrine is very important. And anyway, they continued in that, and that's necessary. So that's why it mentions doctrine and fellowship. So it's actual fellowship where people know each other, they interact with one another, and it's supposed to be a lot of things. They're supposed to help one another, love one another, care for one another, all those things. Jesus said, love one another, and that's how the world will know we're his disciples. That was the key thing he said. So, okay, so fellowship and in the breaking of bread and in prayers. So they all prayed together, and I'm sure individually. There wasn't just one person on a platform. They all prayed continuously and sincerely. And then in the breaking of bread, they were sharing meals together. And that's what that's about. And, okay, so 43, and it says, then fear came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were done through the apostles. So they were doing miracles, and it was just a sign, that God was working through them, and it was more testimony that this was the move of God, and that was, the witness that was being shown that they were doing miracles, and God was with them. So anyway, that's what was happening there. And then this fear coming over every soul is just the awe of, wow, I mean, this is happening, and this is God moving, and he's moving among us. And there would be a sense of awe over that by people in the church and people outside of the church. And as we see, that will be evident later. Okay, and then verse 44, now all who believed were together and had all things in common, and sold their possessions and goods and divided them among all as anyone had need. Now this is a very interesting set of verses here. So I looked up these two words here in the Blue Letter Bible, together and common, and I didn't find out anything interesting about it other than exactly what it says. There's no deep meaning hiding in any of this. It is what it is, and it says what it says. So all who believed was the church. They were together, so they were just spending time together and had all things in common, and that connects to this, and sold their possessions and goods and divided them among all as anyone had need. So this was what was happening in the early church. If somebody had a lot, they would sell their possessions and goods, and they divided them among all in the church as anyone had need. So those who had need, they were more poor, they would receive the benefit of this. They would, get the help and blessing from this. And it was just distributed in that kind of way among the church. And this is highly important. And a lot of people will just try to pick this apart and find fault with it and say, oh, this is a certain form of, politics and economics. And, well, the thing is this, it's God's form of all that. And God has his real form. And the world is full, the devil has all his counterfeits. The world is full of counterfeits, fake utopias that fail you, fake little wonderful kingdoms that fall apart. I heard one term called a Potemkin village. It's like the outside is just this wonderful facade, and behind the scenes it's just run down and ramshackle. So it's this kind of idea. The brochure looks great, but when you get there, it's just a dump. So that's the idea with the world's counterfeit versions of God's plan. And that won't really come in until the kingdom age, but this is his heart, okay? And this should come through in the church while we're here. It's also the kingdom is among us as well in a different way. So that kind of thing should show forth through us as well. So this is for real. This is God's heart. That's what he wants. And it's a good thing. Okay, so doesn't mean every little item, but in general, they helped one another financially. Those who had need were helped by those who had something who they could help them with. So this is a big deal, and it is God's doing. It's not man's doing. I heard once when I was going to a church in California, there was one pastor who had tried to write this off as, oh, this is just man's doing, it's not God. Nope, wrong. It is God's doing and not man's doing. Why else would he put it in here? I mean, why else would it say this? Does this say anything in here about it's man? No, it's obviously God. I mean, it's clear from the context that was a good thing. That's what he wanted. So they will try, every which way to twist that into something else, that it's not, painted in a negative light when it's good and it's God's will. And of course, the pastors don't want you to know that, they don't want you to think this way because it doesn't benefit them. Okay, so this was the goal, not everything going into their pocket. All right, and there's so much more to say about that. That's a whole other video. Okay, so that won't be a short one either. But okay, so now verse 46. So continuing daily with one accord in the temple and breaking bread from house to house, they ate their food with gladness and simplicity of heart. So they did this daily and in one accord. So they were in unity in the spirit. They did this in the temple at the time because that's what they were used to. They used to meet there. I think it was a place outside of it, but they used to meet there. And that was their kind of headquarter location, but that would change. So, and then also breaking bread from house to house. And eventually they had their home church setting that they did. So, okay, that's that. They ate their food with gladness and simplicity of heart. So I guess, getting their food was a big deal. Kind of like they didn't, maybe it was an issue. I know that once they became Christians, there was a lot of ostracizing that went on in the community. So they were depending on provision from God and through other sources like outside churches. Eventually, this is what happened, and that will come up. Anyway, so verse 47, praising God and having favor with all the people. So they were praising God daily. Okay, so that could be, it's a form of worship, obviously. And having favor with all the people. So this sounds like the outside people. They were a good witness and looked upon favorably, and they just were in good standing with the community. Like everybody could see that they were walking uprightly and God was working among them. So they had favor with all the people. I mean, even the outsiders looked up to them, and that's obvious here from what it says. So, and the Lord added to the church daily those who were being saved. So when the church functions this way, it's natural that the church will grow daily. And people will get saved. They'll see that and they will be amazed and they will want to become Christians and the church will grow. That's the normal way that it would grow. And really, the only way that it will naturally grow, it's through this witness here. So that's very important. There are no fancy gimmicks that are going to make the church grow. Compromise is not going to make the church grow. Embracing things that are wrong is not going to make the church grow. It may make the numbers grow, but it won't make the church grow. And those are two different things. So all kinds of other stuff like that is not going to make the church grow, but this is what will make the church grow. There's the key secret right there. Doing all these things, and the church will grow in the right way. So that's what's happening there. Okay, that is it for chapter 2. So again, it doesn't say hiring a clown is going to make the church grow, or handing out, bottles of soda is going to make the church grow. Nope. No, it may make more people come, but it won't make the church grow. So only doing it God's way will make the church grow. So again, Jesus said, love one another, and then they'll all know that we are his disciples. And that's what they were doing. It's just that simple. Okay, so again, that ends chapter 2, and I'll pick up with chapter 3 tomorrow. Okay, so have a blessed day.